You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, you suggest Francois Legault's take on housing is like Marie Antoinette's take on on nutrition, i.e., let them eat what? Cake? In this case, what?
Well, let them eat,
Pudding chômeur.
A housing shortage, but it's not really a housing shortage.
It doesn't.
This is, it's a perfect example, though, because, here's Francois Legault. He's an accountant. I don't begrudge him his skills as an accountant. But, of course, and even it's interesting, even over at the Journal, they kind of slapped themselves in the head and they had to go out and talk to some economists because he basically said, look, you know what? Prices are going up. That's the sign of a thriving economy. Things are doing well. Everything's booming. So, we can't help you with that. But then when there was this backlash, and basically economists are saying perhaps the premier should learn a little bit about the laws of supply and demand. And the fact is the supply of housing is very, very low. Hence, the price is going through the roof. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with the economy. He goes, well, you weren't listening to everything I said. I acknowledge that there's a shortage of housing, but I am pointing out that, things are going well and people have more money and the prices of houses are going up. Bottom line here, it's another example, and it's not unique to the CAC, although they're the latest to carry on the tradition, of simply ignoring or not getting an ongoing problem, because this is not new. He was boasting earlier this week, I've been premier for 5 July 1st, because in Quebec that means moving day, and no one's been left out on the street. The thing is, we are reaching critical mass. We are reaching the point now where unless extraordinary measures are taken to increase the supply of housing, and that, let's face it, affordable housing, and that's right up the government's alley and the Fed's alley as well, we are going to have a major problem. I can't tell you how many times people from my generation have sort of heaved a huge sigh and say, it's amazing, because I don't envy young people trying to start off today. A house, forget about it. They may as well take a trip to the moon. But this is where we are. So we couple that with still the issue of inflation, with the idea as well that the separation of wealth, i.e. the rich are getting poorer and are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. It's not just a song anymore. We've got some real problems coming down the pike. So the first thing I think people like Francois Legault has got to do is first of all, do your homework and find out what the hell you're talking about. And it's even for Justin Trudeau, because the Feds can put money into housing as well. Stop giving me breathless, bromides about how you're working. Get shovels in the ground. And if people turn around and say that, no, this is going to contribute to urban sprawl. Remember, we're not talking about, McMansions or whatever. We're talking about just putting, decent housing out, not welfare housing, but affordable housing for people who are now bulldozed into a corner where it's becoming increasingly unlikely they'll ever be able to afford a home. And do what governments are supposed to do, which is work for the people who elect them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, the fact that he has to backtrack, this is one of those things where he never does it. So the fact that he was pushed into a corner and felt he had to explain it again, Jim, I almost take that as a win.
Well, you take it as a win, but, there's something going on, guys, because even now, the usual suspects over at the Journal de Montreal and all the other Québécois holdings are becoming far more critical, not on the holy grail of identity or language, but certainly in the day-to-day issues of governance. And you look at Legault, who's been so used to saying whatever the hell he wants and getting away with it, much of it over the course of the pandemic, and I think he still hasn't figured out that that's over now. He is subject to much more scrutiny, and the problem here is he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He was asked a simple question, and his answer was pulled out of the air, I will say, for radio, but this is it. And this is an indication of how much attention he is paying to an issue that is affecting a lot of Quebecers, indeed, a lot of people who voted for his government. And the fact that the housing minister right now of Quebec is under a bit of scrutiny for a perceived conflict of interest and is under investigation by the ethics commissioner doesn't help. But honestly, there seems to be a real blind spot between Francois Legault, his government, and a lot of people out there who are looking for homes.
Well, imagine that. Imagine a multi-millionaire.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to imagine that he couldn't relate to that or have any sense of what's really going on out there. What's this story? The CAQ government short on everything but not flags?
Have you not seen this? This
No.
is the big. This is the big one, guys. It's the Fête Nationale on Saturday.
Here we go.
And it's also, because it's a huge convergence, the 75th anniversary of the decision by everybody's favorite bombastic premier, Maurice Duplessis, to designate the fleur-de-lis as Quebec's official flag. So to mark that, the provincially administered and owned Olympic Park, they've put up 132 fleur-de-lis on the Esplanade. I don't know if you've seen the pictures. It's just this sea of blue. It's you know what I think they're trying to make it into what Fête Nationale parades used to look like, as opposed to what they look like now. But you've just got this cavalcade of flags, and it's kind of funny because I would respectfully theorize that when the heat gets on of any populist government, certainly this government, the flags come out. If it wasn't the Fête Nationale, it'd be some other, nationalistic bombast. But to see all these flags at once, I really can't believe it. And I'm really wondering if the residents out there are kind of trying to figure out whether they missed a referendum or whether there's something else going on, because it is quite striking. And the fact that it's only Quebec flags, it's just another chapter in what I'm, the idea of government here was if you say it often enough and wish real hard, you make it so. So this, to a certain extent, could be perceived as a unilateral declaration of independence.
I mean, I was kind of thinking that, those checks that got mailed out to everyone, maybe this time around they would have mailed a flag to everyone. That would have been a nice gesture.
No, that's going to happen during the PQ citizenship ceremony.
That's right. Yeah. They're
Yes.
saving them for that.
Of course.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, the city today came up with, I guess it's planned for the village, what we used to call the gay village. You kind of wondered too little, too late?
Well, too late. It's been going on for 10 years, okay? And if I may refer to the neighborhood as the village formerly known as gay, there was a time I used to sit behind that microphone in that studio. I'd finish it at noon. Remember those days, Natasha? We ships in the night before I was taken off
do
like
remember.
a bat out of hell.
Yep.
But the thing is, unlike some people I'm talking to, I didn't emerge to go home from the Batcave parking lot next door. I actually walked to the Metro. And it was a nice day. I'd walk up to the Beaudry Metro. And I got to tell you guys, over those years, you could see the place was sliding downhill. In the beginning, it was you'd almost say it was kind of touristy. And then you'd see stuff getting boarded up.
So true.
People wandering around, obviously under the influence. And I had covered this story even years before that when homeless and people with addiction issues were showing up in the neighborhood. And one of the people who lived there said they had tried to find out why now? Why is it all happening here? And they said because there is no help in the system for people who have addiction issues, especially out in the regions. They give them a bus ticket and they ship them down to Montreal and say good luck. They have more resources down there. And that was basically the genesis of this. There are no villains, but there has been a great deal of indifference because when I'm reading stuff, in the Gazette now and in my press talking about, this is a new phenomenon. It has been happening over and over again for at least the past 10 years. It's been happening in that neighborhood, and you've seen it elsewhere in Montreal, certainly in the Metro system. But don't be surprised there's homeless people in the Metro. There have been homeless people in the Metro and walking down the tracks, don't ask me how I know, at least for the past decade. So it's really swell. The city's going to have more intervention teams and whatever, but it's just reaction. They've got to get ahead of this issue because it's getting worse. And really, Quebec has to be shamed into this as well because this is a province-wide issue. We're seeing the results of the addiction. We're seeing the consequences of the homelessness. But believe me, this is not a made-in-Montreal issue. This is a Quebec issue.
All right. Look, whenever you say we tend to look a bit narrowly, I think, right? We look at an administration, you say they're the ones in power. You said this has been going on for at least 10 years. I mean, there's a lot of blame to kind of throw around here, isn't there?
Well, it's not really. It's just simple politics because for the same reason, we have these big, deep conversations when a piece of infrastructure, collapses and we go talk to an expert and he says, well, the problem is it's not politically profitable to be completely devoted to infrastructure. There's nothing sexy about cutting a ribbon at an overpass. Well, there's nothing sexy about saying, well, we've opened up or we're opening up a new shelter. There isn't. There are a lot more politically rewarding endeavors for politicians other than dealing, because to a certain extent, when you do deal with it, you're admitting failure. You're admitting either your own failure or of those who came before you. But the fact is, it doesn't matter who's to blame? The fact is the problem's there. It's getting worse, and it really is having a day-to-day effect on this city. When you hear people, merchants or restaurant owners on St. Catherine, who've been there for more than a dozen years, who are shutting down the terraces that they were just renovating because they're scared for their customers' safety. This is not some, airy-fairy kind of socioeconomic issue that you talk about over a flute of white wine. This is something you get down and dirty with and solve as quickly as possible.
Yes.
James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, thank you.